It was Christmas morning, the one day I thought would be filled with laughter, warmth, and joy. My wife, heavily pregnant, was humming by the Christmas tree, the snow falling softly outside. Then Karen, the HOA president, the nightmare of our neighborhood, stormed in. She didn't just complain about our decorations this time, she demanded my pregnant wife leave our home. Right there, in front of our neighbors, my wife was trembling, scared, humiliated. I froze. I couldn't believe what was happening. And just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, a man in a Santa costume appeared on our lawn. At first, I thought he was a random neighbor spreading holiday cheer, but then he started speaking, and what he revealed about Karen, about our family, it shattered everything I thought I knew. This Christmas was about to become the most shocking day of our lives. Before I dive into this unbelievable story, I want to know something. Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments right now. I'm curious if anyone else has experienced a neighborhood nightmare like ours. And hey, while you're at it, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you won't want to miss the twists coming up in this story. Now, let me set the stage. My wife and I had been looking forward to this Christmas for months. She's heavily pregnant, glowing with excitement despite the discomfort, and we had finally managed to put together our dream home. Twinkling lights lined the roof, the smell of fresh pine filled the living room, and the Christmas tree sparkled with ornaments we'd collected over the years. Everything was perfect until Karen, the HOA president, decided to ruin it. Karen wasn't just a strict neighborhood official, she had a reputation. Rumors about her controlling nature and her obsession with rules were everywhere, but we never imagined she'd take it this far. That morning, she barged into our living room, clipboard in hand, and immediately started berating us about some violation. Within minutes, she crossed the line. She pointed at my wife, then at the door, and demanded she leave the house. My wife, 9 months pregnant, was in shock, tears streaming down her face, confused and terrified. I was paralyzed, unsure whether to confront her or call the authorities. Just when I thought this nightmare had reached its peak, a shadow appeared outside, jolly, red, and unmistakably Santa Claus. But there was something different about him, something I couldn't quite place, and what he revealed next would turn this Christmas into a day none of us would ever forget. Christmas morning had always been my favorite time of year, but that particular morning felt like it had been lifted straight out of a horror story. My wife, 9 months pregnant, was humming a soft lullaby as she placed the last ornament on our tree. The scent of cinnamon candles and fresh pine filled every corner of our home. Outside, snow drifted lazily onto our front lawn, blanketing everything in pristine white. It was the kind of Christmas you see in movies, where everything feels magical, where time slows down just enough to let you savor the warmth of family. I was ready to create memories my wife and unborn child would remember for years, even if they weren't yet born. But then Karen arrived. For anyone unfamiliar, Karen wasn't just a neighborhood HOA president, she was the embodiment of control. Picture someone who wields rules like weapons, someone who thrives on making other people feel small, someone who believes she has the right to dictate every detail of everyone else's lives. We had tiptoed around her before, obeying regulations even when they made no sense. But somehow, we had crossed an invisible line this time. She burst through our front door with her clipboard clutched tightly in one hand, her heels clicking against the hardwood like a warning bell. "I've had multiple complaints about your decorations," she announced, her voice sharp enough to cut through the soft Christmas music playing in the background. "And you are in violation of several HOA rules. This is unacceptable." I tried to reason with her, explaining that the lights were within the size limits, that we had followed every rule, that the ornaments were just ornaments. But Karen wouldn't hear it. Her eyes narrowed, and she scanned the living room like a predator assessing prey. Then she spotted my wife, and everything changed. "You," she said, pointing directly at my pregnant wife, "need to leave now." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Excuse me," I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, though my heart was racing. "She's 9 months pregnant. She's not going anywhere." Karen smirked, like she was enjoying every second of my shock. I don't care. Rules are rules, and I am enforcing them. If she refuses, I will call the authorities. My wife, stunned, began to cry. She clutched her stomach and whispered, I didn't do anything wrong. Please. Her voice trembled, each word breaking my heart into pieces I didn't think I could pick up. I wanted to scream at Karen, to make her understand that this wasn't just about decorations. This was about humanity, decency, basic compassion. But the words caught in my throat. I stepped forward, trying to shield my wife with my body, feeling both helpless and furious at the same time. This isn't right, I said, my voice louder now. You can't just kick a pregnant woman out of her home on Christmas. Karen's smirk only widened. Oh, I can, she said, and I will. Merry Christmas. The audacity of her words felt like a punch to the gut. I wanted to call the police, but somehow I was frozen. I couldn't believe that in a country that prided itself on fairness and justice, this woman could feel so entitled to ruin someone else's life without consequences. And then the neighbors started gathering outside, curious and whispering, their breath visible in the cold winter air. My wife's tears ran freely now, and I could see the fear in her eyes, the fear of being forced out, the fear of humiliation, the fear that our peaceful life could be ripped apart in a single moment. That's when I heard it, soft, deliberate footsteps crunching through the snow outside. At first, I thought it was just another neighbor curious about the commotion. But then I saw him, a man in a Santa Claus costume, his belly shaking like a bowl full of jelly, his boots crunching in the snow. But there was something off about him. He wasn't waving or smiling at the neighborhood. His eyes, sharp and focused, locked onto Karen. And in that instant, I felt a shiver run down my spine. This wasn't just a random person dressed up for Christmas. This was someone who had come here with a purpose. Karen noticed him too. Her smug expression faltered just a fraction. Who? Who are you supposed to be? She demanded. The man's voice was deep, calm, and commanding, yet carried a strange familiarity. You don't know me, Karen, he said, but I know you, and I know what you're doing. I didn't understand what he meant at the time. Who was this man? And how did he know her? My wife, still trembling, clung to me, whispering, Please, don't let her take this from us. I wanted to reassure her, to tell her that everything was going to be okay, but deep down, I had no idea how this was going to end. Karen, for the first time, looked uncertain, her usual confidence shaken. The man in the Santa costume stepped closer, and I could see determination in his eyes, a kind of authority that didn't need words to command attention. Then he spoke again, slowly, deliberately. Karen, you don't have the right to do this. Not today. Not ever. And what happens next? Everyone needs to see the truth. I could feel the weight of his words, though I still didn't understand the full meaning. But the tension in the air was suffocating. It was as if the very walls of our home were holding their breath, waiting for what was about to happen. My wife's hand tightened around mine, her nails digging into my skin, a silent plea for protection. And in that moment, I realized that this Christmas, the one we had been anticipating for months, had turned into a battleground. A battle for dignity, for safety, for the simplest human decency. And somewhere, beyond the fear and the tears, a twist was waiting. A revelation so shocking, it would leave me questioning everything I thought I knew about our neighborhood, about Karen, and about the mysterious man in red who had just appeared. This wasn't going to be a normal Christmas. Not by a long shot. I still remember the way the snow seemed to pause that morning, as if the entire world had gone silent, watching the confrontation unfold. Karen, normally so composed and ruthless, looked flustered. Her eyes darted between my wife, me, and the man in the Santa costume. There was an edge of fear there I hadn't seen before, a crack in her carefully constructed armor. The man took a slow step forward, his boots crunching against the snow, and lifted his arms slightly. Karen, he said, his voice calm but authoritative, I've waited a long time to confront you like this. You've been hiding behind rules and power for too long. Today it ends. Karen laughed nervously, though it didn't reach her eyes. And who are you supposed to be? Some neighborhood clown playing dress-up? She snapped, trying to regain control. The man's gaze sharpened. No, Karen. I am someone you cannot deceive. I know you, every secret you thought was buried, and I know what you are trying to do to them. His eyes met mine and my wife's. I could feel a strange energy in the air, a kind of reassurance mixed with an underlying tension, as if everything about this man was preparing to shift our lives forever. He reached into his coat, not for a weapon, but for a small envelope. I've been keeping this for years, he said, holding it high so Karen and everyone watching could see. It contains proof of everything you've done, not just here in this neighborhood, but before, and it names the people who helped you cover it up. Karen's face drained of color. The confident smirk was gone, replaced by panic. What is this? How did you? He interrupted her, voice low and unyielding. I've known you since long before this neighborhood existed. You've always been manipulative, controlling, willing to hurt anyone who gets in your way. And now, you've crossed a line you cannot come back from. My wife clung to me wide-eyed, whispering, Who? Who is he? How does he know her? The man, still in the red Santa suit, looked directly at her. I am someone who knows her better than anyone, someone who can stop her from hurting innocent people. And right now, that includes you and your unborn child. I could feel the tension in the air rise to a breaking point. The neighbors outside, who had been gathering in curiosity, were now silent, straining to hear what was happening. Karen's hands trembled as she reached for a clipboard, as if some rules might magically protect her. But nothing could shield her from what was about to be revealed. Karen, the man said again, slower this time, do you remember the incident 10 years ago? The one you've tried to erase from your life? The one you swore no one would ever know about? Her lips parted, her composure cracking. I don't know what you're talking about, she stammered. He stepped closer, removing his hat to reveal a face that seemed vaguely familiar, yet impossible. My mind raced. I couldn't place him, but there was something about his eyes, something that spoke of history, of past grievances, of truths buried deep. Don't play games, Karen. You know exactly what I'm talking about, and today everyone will know. At that moment, a neighbor gasped. Some of the more distant residents had recognized him. Murmurs rippled through the small crowd, but no one dared move closer. It felt like we were all caught in the eye of a storm, one that had been brewing long before any of us had moved here. Then he spoke directly to me. I know this is hard to believe, but I need you to understand, what happens next is not random. This Christmas, your wife's safety depends on the truth coming out. And the truth involves me, her, and Karen. I felt my stomach knot. My wife's grip on my hand tightened, and I realized she was shaking, not from cold, but from fear, confusion, and perhaps a dawning realization that whatever this man was about to reveal would change everything. The man in Santa paused, letting the suspense hang in the air like heavy snow. Then he spoke again, slowly, deliberately. Karen and I, we were once married. A collective gasp went through the crowd. My jaw dropped. My wife's eyes widened in disbelief. Karen's face went pale, her hands flying to her mouth. She tried to laugh, to deny it, to dismiss it, but the truth had a weight she could not escape. Yes, Santa continued, his voice steady. Before any of you were here, before these houses existed, before the neighborhood formed, she was my wife. And the woman you see before you is still the same person who allowed greed, control, and jealousy to consume her. I could hardly process what I was hearing. The man in red, Santa, the protector, the mysterious figure who had appeared out of nowhere, was telling us that Karen's cruelty had deep roots, that it wasn't just a neighbor being unreasonable. This was personal, deeply personal. Karen finally found her voice, shaky but defiant. That was years ago. I've changed. The man shook his head, eyes piercing through her. No, Karen. You've only learned how to hide it better. But the truth has a way of surfacing, especially on Christmas. Today, your attempts to humiliate an innocent pregnant woman will fail, because the people who matter, your neighbors, the family you've tried to intimidate, will see you for what you truly are. I looked at my wife, who was still clutching me, trembling. I whispered, "It's going to be okay. I don't know how, but it's going to be okay." Then the man reached into the envelope again, and pulled out a series of photographs and documents. He handed them to me. My hands shook as I looked at them. These weren't just random papers. They were evidence of Karen's past manipulations, lies, and schemes, including records that tied directly to how she had tormented neighbors and used rules to intimidate and control. You see this, the man said, everything she has done is documented, and today the world sees it. Karen's eyes darted frantically. No, you can't, this isn't real. But the neighbors had begun murmuring, some moving closer to witness the scene. Whispers of she's lying, he's telling the truth. And I remember that, too, spread like wildfire. The power that Karen had wielded for so long, over us, over the neighborhood, was slipping through her fingers. And then, just when I thought the tension couldn't climb higher, he revealed the final twist. I didn't just come here to expose Karen. I came here to protect a family that matters to me. That's why I've been watching, waiting, and today I stepped in. Because what happens to her, the innocent one, matters far more than anything else. My wife's face softened with confusion and relief. The stranger in red, this Santa wasn't just some random hero. He had a connection, a purpose, a reason that none of us could yet fully understand. And in that moment, I realized this Christmas was no longer about decorations, rules, or even threats. This Christmas had become a reckoning. A day when truth, courage, and unexpected heroes would collide in ways none of us could have imagined. The snow continued to fall outside, covering our once-perfect Christmas lawn in a thick white blanket. But inside, the atmosphere had grown tense, almost suffocating. Karen's smirk had vanished completely, replaced with something far more dangerous, panic. The Santa standing before us, calm yet resolute, had shifted the balance of power. And now, the story was about to take a turn even more shocking than I could have imagined. The man, our mysterious Santa, took a deep breath and began recounting a story that would make my jaw drop. Karen wasn't always just an HOA president obsessed with rules. She's been manipulative for decades, long before this neighborhood existed. I know her better than anyone because once I was married to her. The room seemed to shrink as he spoke. I looked at my wife, her wide eyes filled with a mixture of fear, disbelief, and growing curiosity. Married? She whispered. You mean? Yes, he said, his voice steady. This woman, the same woman standing there, demanding rules and enforcing fear, was once my wife. And during that time, I witnessed firsthand how far she would go to control people, to manipulate situations, to hurt those who stood in her way. Karen's face turned crimson. That was years ago, she shot back, her voice trembling, as though trying to convince herself as much as anyone else. I've changed. Santa shook his head. No, Karen. You've only learned to hide it better, but the pattern remains the same. Rules, intimidation, humiliation, it's all part of who you are. I've seen it before. I lived it. He stepped closer, looking directly at me now. I know this is hard to understand. To you, she may have seemed just a strict neighbor enforcing minor rules. But her cruelty is methodical, premeditated. She thrives on power, control, and fear. That's why today she thought nothing of forcing your pregnant wife out of her home on Christmas. I felt my blood boil. The image of my wife, trembling and terrified, flashed in my mind again. Why are you telling us this now? I asked, barely able to keep my voice calm. Because, he said, pausing for effect, the truth matters. Because when people see the real Karen, when they understand her history, she can no longer hide behind rules or fear. And because what she tried to do today will not happen again. Then, Santa began recounting Karen's manipulations from years ago, stories that seemed almost unreal. Incidents of sabotaging neighbors, spreading lies, coercing people to bend to her will, and even legal maneuvers designed to humiliate anyone who opposed her. I could see some of the neighbors whispering among themselves, recognizing moments they had suspected but never fully understood. And that's not all, Santa continued, his voice dropping lower, more serious. Karen's behavior extends far beyond this neighborhood. Before she arrived here, she had left a trail of chaos wherever she went. Families torn apart, neighbors driven out, reputations destroyed. I have the evidence, documents, photographs, legal records, proving it all. And today, everyone will see it. Karen's hands shook. She was trying to regain composure, but the years of careful control she had exercised were crumbling before her eyes. You can't, you're lying, she stammered. Santa's eyes locked on hers. I'm not. I've lived it. I know your history, Karen. And today you will face it. The woman you tried to terrorize, the one you thought you could break with your rules, she will not be your victim. My wife clutched my arm, still trembling, and whispered, I don't understand. Who is he really? I didn't have an answer. All I knew was that this man in his red suit seemed to hold the key to everything. The truth, the protection, the justice that had seemed impossible just moments ago. And somehow he had personal stakes. Somehow he had history. Somehow he had been waiting for the right moment. Then Santa revealed the part that sent chills down my spine. Karen and I share a child from our past, he said, his voice calm but cutting through the tension like a knife. A child she abandoned, a secret she thought no one would ever uncover. I've carried that secret for years, watching her manipulate and control. Today it surfaces. I froze. My mind raced. Could it be true? A child? Karen's smirk had vanished completely. The rage, panic, and desperation were now raw and exposed. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, searching for some response that didn't exist. Santa took a step closer to the group of neighbors who had gathered outside, lifting a set of papers and photographs from his coat. Look at this, he said, pointing to a series of documents detailing her past manipulations, the legal battles she had quietly won through intimidation, and the letters proving her ruthlessness. This is the real Karen, not the polite HOA president you see now, not the neighbor who enforces rules, but the woman who will stop at nothing to get what she wants. The neighbors murmured in disbelief. Some of them began piecing together their own experiences, seeing the patterns now that Santa had laid them bare. Whispers turned to discussions, then to gasps as it became clear that Karen's behavior wasn't just about rules. It was about control, fear, and a need to dominate. Karen, now visibly shaken, tried one last desperate tactic. You can't tell anyone. This is private. Santa shook his head. Private? You made it public when you tried to humiliate an innocent woman on Christmas in her own home. Today, the truth is no longer private, and everyone will see it. I looked at my wife, her hand still tightly gripping mine. The fear in her eyes was giving way to something else, hope. The realization that she wasn't alone, that she had an ally, that someone had come to stand up to Karen, was beginning to settle in. Santa took a deep breath and addressed the crowd one final time. This is more than just a neighborhood dispute. This is about accountability, about justice, about exposing the truth that has been buried for too long. And today that truth comes to light. Karen cannot hide it anymore. Karen's composure had completely collapsed. She looked around, seeing the neighbors staring, whispering, witnessing her unravel. The power she had wielded for so long was gone in an instant. And in that moment, I realized something incredible. Christmas had become more than a celebration. It had become a reckoning. My wife leaned into me, whispering, I feel safe now. I think he's here to protect us. I nodded, understanding finally what had been happening. This mysterious Santa wasn't just a random hero. He was someone with history, someone with knowledge, someone who had waited for the exact right moment to reveal the truth and protect us from Karen's cruelty. And even as Karen trembled in shock, the stage was set for what would come next, the final confrontations, the ultimate revelations, and a Christmas none of us would ever forget. The cold winter air seemed to thrum with tension, as if every snowflake hanging in the sky knew that something monumental was about to unfold. My wife and I stood side by side, her hand clutching mine so tightly I could feel the pressure in my bones. Karen's usual aura of control had shattered completely. She was pacing back and forth, muttering to herself, her clipboard now useless in her trembling hands. And standing before her, the man in the Santa suit, my heart still struggled to grasp who he really was, looked as calm and resolute as ever. Karen, Santa said, his voice cutting through the murmur of neighbors gathered outside, you've been exposed. Every lie, every act of manipulation, every secret you thought was buried. You cannot hide it any longer. Karen snapped her head toward him, anger flashing in her eyes. I don't care what you say. These are private matters. I am in charge here. No, Santa said, shaking his head slowly. You are no longer in charge of people's lives. You've been abusing that power for too long, and today that ends. Especially here, today, in front of the people you thought you could intimidate. I felt my blood start to boil. I had wanted to stand up for my wife from the moment Karen had demanded she leave our home. But now I realized I didn't even need to. Santa, somehow, had become the authority we needed. He had knowledge, history, and leverage that none of us could have imagined. And yet, my instinct told me this confrontation was far from over. Karen took a step forward, her voice rising. You have no right. I'm respected here. People listen to me. You can't just. But the neighbors had already begun whispering. One by one, they were piecing together the puzzle Santa had laid out for them. Stories of Karen's past manipulations, her cruelty hidden behind the guise of HOA rules, and her obsessive control over neighbors were surfacing. Whispers became murmurs, murmurs became questioning voices. You lied to us, a neighbor said, stepping closer, pointing at Karen. We trusted you. We followed your rules. And you've been manipulating everyone all along? Karen's face contorted with rage, her composure now completely gone. You don't understand. You weren't there. You don't know what I did for this community. Santa took a deliberate step closer, his eyes locking with hers. Oh, we understand, Karen. We understand all too well. And now everyone else will too. He gestured toward me and my wife. Your attempt to humiliate her, this innocent pregnant woman, on Christmas, in her own home, has finally brought your entire past into the open. Karen's breathing became erratic, her hands shook, and she glanced nervously at the neighbors around us. The air was heavy with anticipation, as though everyone knew they were about to witness the unraveling of a person who had terrorized them in subtle, insidious ways for years. I felt my wife lean into me, whispering, I think this is finally over. Santa turned his attention to the crowd. You see the truth, not through my words alone, but through the evidence I hold. Photographs, documents, and records that prove everything. Every lie, every scheme, every manipulation Karen has orchestrated, laid bare for all to see. Karen's face twisted in desperation. You can't. These are lies, fabrications. Santa shook his head. No, Karen. These are facts, and the people you thought you could intimidate will now see the real you. Not the polished HOA president, not the woman who enforces rules. They will see your true nature. Then came the twist that made my stomach drop and my heart pound harder than it ever had. Santa, standing tall in his red suit, reached out and removed his hat. The familiar face, the one that had seemed so calm and protective, now revealed its true identity. Everyone, he said, I am not just here to expose Karen. I am here to protect a family that matters to me. This woman, your wife, she is connected to me in ways Karen never anticipated. My mind reeled. I turned to my wife, her face pale and frightened. What does he mean? I whispered. Santa smiled faintly. Karen thought she could manipulate everyone, control everyone, and even erase the past. But she didn't count on one thing, me, and today that changes everything. Karen's eyes widened. Panic, fear, rage, all mixed together in a terrifying storm of emotion. She took another step toward us, as if to challenge this revelation, but Santa raised a hand. Do not come closer. Not today. Your power ends here. For the first time in years, Karen's authority over anyone seemed to vanish. Neighbors began whispering louder, some stepping forward to demand answers, some shaking their heads in disbelief. The woman who had spent years enforcing rules and controlling lives was now stripped bare, exposed, and powerless. And then Santa revealed the final bombshell. Karen, he said, voice steady, cutting through the winter air, You thought no one would ever find out about the child you abandoned, about the promises you broke, about the people you hurt. But today, the truth comes to light. The child you left behind, the secrets you buried, they will no longer remain hidden. Karen's hands flew to her face. She was trembling violently now, as if the weight of her past had finally caught up to her. No, it's not true. But the neighbors didn't wait for her to finish. Voices rose in chorus. Tell us the truth, Karen. We deserve it. Santa stepped closer to me and my wife. They'll see justice today. They'll witness the truth. And your family safe here will finally be free from her attempts to intimidate and harm. I felt a surge of relief, but it was tempered by disbelief. How had this stranger in a Santa suit become the person who could finally confront Karen and expose everything? How had he known all this, and why now, on Christmas morning, had he chosen to intervene? Santa glanced back at Karen, his expression solemn. This Christmas, the reckoning has come. Not just for you, but for everyone who thought they could get away with cruelty under the guise of rules and authority. Today, the truth wins. Karen's face twisted in despair and anger. She looked around, realizing that the neighbors who once feared her were now witnesses to her unraveling. For the first time, her world, carefully controlled for years, was collapsing. My wife clung to me again, whispering, I think it's really over this time. I nodded, still in shock at the drama unfolding before us. But deep down, I knew this wasn't just a neighborhood dispute anymore. This was a confrontation with the past, with hidden truths, and with justice finally catching up to someone who had thought herself untouchable. And as Karen sank to the ground, defeated, and the neighbors began murmuring in awe and disbelief, I realized that this Christmas, our Christmas, had become more than just a holiday. It had become a battlefield for truth, courage, and revelation, and somehow, against all odds, we had emerged on the side of justice. The air was still thick with tension, the snow outside falling silently as if the world itself was holding its breath. Karen, now exposed for the first time in years, slumped against the front porch railing, her face pale and broken. The neighbors, once fearful of her, were staring in disbelief. Some whispered to each other, piecing together what they had suspected all along. Some shook their heads, unable to believe that someone they had considered a leader could harbor such a dark and manipulative past. And in the middle of it all, the man in the Santa suit, my wife and I still unable to grasp his true identity, stood calmly, like a pillar holding the fragile balance of truth. He had revealed Karen's secrets, her manipulations, her lies, her cruelty. He had done more than just confront her. He had dismantled the foundation of fear she had built over years. Then came the moment that made my heart stop. Santa looked directly at Karen and said, Before this day is over, there is one more truth that must be revealed. A truth that even she doesn't know you will survive. Karen blinked, panic flashing in her eyes. What are you talking about? Santa reached into his coat and pulled out a small, folded letter, old and worn, its edges yellowed with age. This is the last piece of the puzzle, he said. He handed it to me. My hands shook as I unfolded it, revealing handwriting I didn't recognize, yet felt strangely familiar. My wife leaned over my shoulder, curiosity and fear mingling in her eyes. The letter was addressed to Karen, and as I read it aloud, the neighbors listened in stunned silence. Karen, the life you thought you could control has consequences you cannot imagine. The child you abandoned, the choices you made, the people you hurt, they will catch up to you. And on the day you try to harm another innocent soul, the truth will rise. My heart skipped a beat. The letter wasn't just evidence of her past, it was a direct warning. Santa was not merely an observer or an ally. He was part of this story in ways we were only beginning to understand. Then he spoke, voice steady, yet carrying an edge that made everyone shiver. Karen, I am that truth. I am the consequence of your past. I have been waiting for this day to ensure that no more harm comes from you. And now, the moment has arrived. The neighbors gasped. Some whispered, he's her past? Her husband. Others murmured, "This is unbelievable." Karen's eyes darted around, searching for some escape, some leverage she could use. But there was none. The power she had wielded for years, through intimidation, through manipulation, was gone. In its place was truth, evidence, and the presence of someone who knew her past intimately, someone she could not control. And then came the final revelation that left my wife and me stunned. Santa, this man who had appeared out of nowhere to protect us, was not only Karen's former husband, he was also our family's long-lost guardian. "You see," Santa said, looking at my wife with a soft but intense gaze, "I have been watching over your family for years. Your safety, your happiness, even your unborn child. It was always my responsibility." Karen's influence reached far and wide, but today her reach ends. I felt my wife gasp, clutching my arm. You've been protecting us this whole time," she whispered. He nodded. "Every moment I could, from a distance, I ensured that you would be safe. But when Karen tried to cross a line, forcing you out of your home while pregnant, I knew it was time to step in directly." Karen's face had gone white. She was shaking now, realizing that all her schemes, all her years of manipulation, had been countered not just by evidence, but by someone she thought she had left behind. "No, you can't. This isn't fair," she cried, her voice cracking under the weight of years of guilt and fear. Santa shook his head, firm and unwavering. "Fair? Life is not always fair, Karen. But justice has a way of finding its course. And today justice is here. Your reign of control ends. Your victim will no longer live in fear. And your secrets, they are exposed for everyone to see." At that moment, the neighbors began clapping, not in celebration of cruelty, but in recognition of truth and courage. Karen had dominated them for years, but now, stripped of her power, they could finally see her for who she truly was. Then came the last twist, the one that made my jaw drop. Santa revealed that the child Karen had abandoned years ago was not lost to her, but had grown up safely under the care of another family in the neighborhood. "And today," he said, "that child knows the truth about you. Your past cannot harm them anymore. Your influence ends here." Karen collapsed to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably, her dominance shattered completely. She had lost the battle not because of confrontation, not because of rules, but because of truth, accountability, and someone who had cared enough to intervene. I turned to my wife, tears streaming down her face. "We're safe?" I whispered, unable to fully comprehend the relief washing over me. Santa knelt beside us, removing his red hat, revealing a warm, protective smile. "This Christmas," he said softly, "was never about rules or decorations. It was about courage, about standing up for what is right, and about protecting those who cannot protect themselves. And today, that victory is yours." The neighbors began to gather around, some offering hugs, some expressing relief, some still staring in disbelief. Karen sat silently on the snow-dusted porch, a broken figure, while the man who had appeared as Santa, the protector, the exposer of truth, smiled gently at us. I realized something then. This Christmas was not just about surviving Karen's cruelty. It was about witnessing the power of truth, the arrival of unexpected heroes, and the emotional closure that comes when justice is finally served. And as the snow continued to fall, soft and gentle, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. My wife rested her head against my chest, our unborn child kicking inside her womb, a reminder of life, hope, and new beginnings. This Christmas, a day that had begun in terror and fear, had ended in revelation, protection, and an unbreakable sense of justice. Santa, the man who had appeared when we needed him most, stood back, watching the neighborhood. Then he turned to me and my wife. "Remember this," he said. "The greatest gift is not gold or decorations, but truth, courage, and the safety of those you love. Protect them, cherish them, and never let anyone like her take that away again." With that, he stepped back into the falling snow, disappearing as mysteriously as he had arrived, leaving us with a newfound sense of safety, closure, and an unforgettable story that would stay with us for the rest of our lives. I looked at my wife, tears still streaming, and whispered, "Merry Christmas!" I think it really is now. She smiled weakly through her tears, and in that moment, I realized that sometimes the most extraordinary heroes appear when you least expect them, and sometimes the most unforgettable Christmases are those where darkness is overcome by truth, love, and justice. The snow outside had settled into a soft, glimmering blanket over the neighborhood, reflecting the fading afternoon light. Inside our home, the warmth of the fireplace was a stark contrast to the storm of emotions we had just endured. My wife and I sat together on the couch, her hand resting gently on her swollen belly, and I felt a mixture of relief, awe, and lingering disbelief. This Christmas had been like no other. What began as joy and excitement had turned into fear, uncertainty, and chaos, but ultimately it had ended with truth, courage, and unexpected heroes. As we sat quietly, I reflected on everything that had happened. Karen, the woman who had terrorized our neighborhood, who had humiliated my wife and abused the power of her HOA position, had finally been exposed. And it wasn't just her manipulation of rules or her control over others that had been revealed. It was her entire pattern of cruelty, her lies, and her decades-long obsession with dominance. Yet, even in that exposure, there was a strange sense of closure. Justice had been served, not violently, but through truth, courage, and accountability. I turned to my wife, who was still holding back tears. "It's over," I whispered. "We're safe now. Nothing she does can touch us." She nodded, a small, weary smile on her lips. "I never thought I'd see the day," she murmured. I thought she could ruin everything for us." And then I thought about the man who had appeared in the red suit, who had revealed the shocking truth about Karen's past, and who had quietly protected our family. He wasn't just a mysterious Santa. He was someone deeply connected to both the past and our present. He had carried the weight of truth and responsibility for years, waiting for the right moment to intervene. And he had done so with precision, courage, and unwavering resolve. It was a reminder, I realized, of how life often works in mysterious ways. Heroes don't always arrive when you expect them, and justice doesn't always come through the channels you anticipate. Sometimes it comes quietly, unexpectedly, and with a twist so shocking that it changes everything you thought you knew. I looked around our home, the tree still sparkling, the decorations still in place, and the quiet sense of normalcy returning, and felt a profound sense of gratitude. Gratitude for my wife's strength, for the safety of our unborn child, and for the mysterious protector who had appeared like an angel in disguise. Then, as I reflected further, I thought about the lessons we had learned. Courage matters more than fear. Karen had tried to intimidate and control, but the courage of standing up, even indirectly through Santa, had shifted everything. Truth always surfaces. No matter how deeply someone tries to bury their past, it eventually comes to light. Today proved that honesty and evidence have power. Unexpected heroes exist. Sometimes help comes from places or people you would never imagine. In our case, a man in a Santa suit saved the day, but the lesson is universal. Never underestimate those who quietly watch over you. Family and protection are the ultimate priorities. My wife, our child, and our safety were the guiding forces that brought intervention and resolution. Protecting the ones you love is a responsibility worth fighting for. I thought about my neighbors who had witnessed the entire confrontation. I knew this experience would change the community forever. Fear had been replaced by understanding, suspicion by awareness, and silence by accountability. Karen's power had crumbled, but the collective experience of facing truth together would stay with everyone forever. As the day drew to a close, I realized something profound about Christmas itself. For many, the holiday is about gifts, decorations, and traditions. For me, this Christmas had become about something deeper. The triumph of justice, the power of courage, and the irreplaceable value of protection and family. It was about witnessing a reckoning and surviving it stronger, wiser, and more grateful than ever before. And then I felt it, our child kicking inside my wife's belly, a tiny reminder of life continuing, hope persisting, and love prevailing, even after a day filled with fear and revelation. I whispered softly, "We're going to be okay. Everything is going to be okay." I wanted to turn to the audience now because if you're watching this story, you're part of the journey too. Think about the people in your life, the challenges you face, and the injustices you've seen. Who has been your unexpected hero? Who has stood up when no one else could? And if no one has yet, remember, courage, truth, and justice are powerful forces that can change lives, sometimes in ways you could never imagine. So, I want you to pause for a moment. Comment below. Where are you watching this from? What city are you in? I want to know because stories like this connect us all, no matter where we are. And if you've ever faced someone like Karen in your life, someone who tried to control, intimidate, or harm, you're not alone. There's always a way to find protection, support, and the courage to confront it. And here's my final message to you. Subscribe to this channel, not just for stories, but for inspiration, for courage, for moments that remind us that no matter how dark or complicated life becomes, truth and justice can prevail. Like this story, sometimes the most extraordinary heroes appear when you least expect them. Sometimes the most unforgettable Christmases are those that test you, reveal the truth, and remind you of what truly matters. If this story shocked you, inspired you, or moved you, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and comment below with your thoughts. Did the twist surprise you? Could you imagine facing someone like Karen? And remember, sometimes the person who saves the day is someone you'd never expect or someone who's been quietly watching over you all along. As my wife and I sat by the tree, watching the snow drift outside and feeling the warmth of the fire, I whispered once more, "Merry Christmas." The real magic isn't the gifts, it's love, courage, and truth. And with that, our Christmas, a day that began with fear and ended with revelation, became a story we would never forget, a story of justice, protection, and the extraordinary twists of life that remind us to never stop believing.